Again, according to UNICEF, there are 8.5 million children across the globe in just unspeakable child labor situations, such as prostitution and debt bondage. Again, according to UNICEF, think of war. In the last 10 years, 2 million children have died because of war. I think the label is collateral damage. 5 million children have been disabled. 12 million children have been left homeless or orphaned in the last 10 years. You know, sadly, I could spend the next 30 minutes with these statistics. But you have your own stories to tell. This is the world, a snapshot of the world our children live in. Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, "The ultimate test of a just and a moral society is the world that it creates for its children." And Robert Theobald, he said, if the 20th century was marked by getting ahead, the 21st century must be the century for healing. And he says, forget the government. Forget the institutions. That healing will only take place when everyday citizens like you and me recognize that we are the healers. We are the ones to bring healing to the broken and battered children of this world. I love the story of the rabbi who asked his students, how can you tell when night has given way to day? And his students were really eager to please their great teacher, and they raised their hands and said, well, Master, you can tell that night has given way to day when you look in the distance and you can start to make out the outline of the tree. And the rabbi just shook his head. Another student said, Teacher, you can tell that night has given way to day when you look and you can see that a cow is a cow and a horse is a horse. And again, the rabbi shook his head. And finally, the student said, well, tell us, teacher. And the rabbi said, you can tell that night has given way to day when you look into the eyes of another and you see a brother or you see a sister. But if you look into the eyes of another and you do not see a brother and you do not see a sister, it is still night. That is the paradigm that can change our world. The recognition of the oneness of all creation, the recognition of the divine thread that weaves its way through all people, the recognition that as one suffers, all suffer. Or as Martin Luther King said, injustice to one is injustice to all. The recognition that in God's economy, nobody wins until we all win. My favorite story, it happened in Sarajevo shortly after the war. And there was a photographer from Time magazine who was taking pictures of the ravages of the war, and he was photographing this building that was bombed out. And as he was taking this picture, he heard the sound of a sniper's rifle, and he turned in the direction, and a child in the distance had fallen to the ground, and he ran as fast as he could. And when he got there, this child was held by this man, and this man said, my child's been shot, help. So the photographer went and got his car, and he helped the man and the child into the back seat, and he raced to the nearest hospital. And this man in the back seat said, my child, she's bleeding so badly, hurry. And when they got to the hospital, the man in the back seat said, my child, she has stopped breathing. The doctors and the nurses took the child away, leaving the man and the photographer to pace in the waiting room. And they paced for what seemed like an eternity. And finally, a doctor came through the door with that look on his face, you know, the look that says we did everything we possibly could, and it was too late. And the man turns to the photographer and says, we need to go and find this child's father and tell him at once. The photographer said, Father, I thought you were the father. You said, my child. To which the man said, they're all our children. They're all our children.